We are on Bet Amud Bet, or if you're following the art scroll on 2B2. Let's go through a very quick recap of Masechet Makkot up until this point. So everyone who's here with us, who is joining maybe for the first time, or who maybe is a little bit lost, will be able to kind of get right back on track within, I'm going to give it maybe a 20-second, 30-second, well, maybe a little bit longer than that, maybe a 60-second review before we start. The Masechet begins, and this is how you try and remember the flow of the Masechet. The Masechet begins by asking, Edim Zomimim, how does it work? And really, as we understood in the Gemara's question is not, how do you make Edim Zomimim? We're going to come to that soon. But rolling off of the previous Mishnah in the last Masechet in Sanhedrin, where we were talking about Edim Zomimim, about witnesses that were made Zomimim, when do they get the punishment that they were trying to visit upon the other people? When does that happen? And when do they get an alternate punishment? Because we actually just saw a case in Sanhedrin where they got no punishment. So what is the case where they get a punishment, but just not the one that they were trying to visit on, the conspiring witnesses were trying to visit on the victim of their scheme? The Mishnah gave two examples. One is when they say that the Kohen came from someone who's not a valid mother of a Kohen, and since that's the case, so these children are no longer kosher Kohanim, ben chalutza and ben girusha. In such a case, they do not get that punishment. What do they get instead? They get Malkut. The second case is when they say someone killed accidentally, they would be conspiring to make them Hayav Galut. So in that case, do we send them to Galut because of Kasher Zamam? Because they tried to make that happen to somebody else? The answer is no. What do they get? Again, they get Malkut. They get lashes. That's what the Mishnah said. On that point of the Mishnah, the Gemara basically then pulls this apart and says, okay, well, how do you know they don't get that punishment? The Pasuk seemingly says straight out, Kasher Zamam. What's the Gemara's answer to that? The Gemara says two answers. An answer we try that sticks, and an answer we try that fails. The answer we try that sticks is, it says, we will do to him law. We'll do to him what he tried to do to his fellow Jew. But here, if we make this guy an invalid Kohen, we're not only punishing him, we're punishing also his children. And that the Torah never said. So therefore, since lo lezaro means if a guy's trying to make a ben Kohen be a ben girusha, ben chalutza, the halacha is we don't invalidate his own kehuna, rather we give him lashes. The Gemara then tries a second approach. Oh, maybe we can learn it from a kal vachomer. And the Gemara brings a kal vachomer to try and prove that would be the halacha. The Gemara then upends that kal vachomer and then says, no, we're going to stick with the pasuk. Okay? That's the first part. The second part was, the guy does not get galut. Why doesn't he get galut? The Gemara says, we're going to learn that from the pasuk. And then we try with the kal vachomer, and then that fails. What was the pasuk that we learned with regards to the guy who gets galut? It says, he's going to go into exile for accidentally killing someone, but not someone else. Who's that someone else that we're excluding? We're excluding the person who might otherwise have gotten galut because of he was a conspiring witness. The Gemara tries the kal vachomer. Again, we bring a disproof to the kal vachomer, but along the way, we learn a very valuable lesson in that conversation about that second failed kal vachomer. And what valuable lesson did we learn? Does anyone remember? That when you give a kapara, sometimes the reason why we don't give you a punishment is not because you don't deserve it. In fact, you do deserve it, but it's not enough to be able to give you kapara. So since it's not enough, we leave it to heaven. Hashem will take care of this guy. He's going to get the punishment in the right time. We don't want to give him the too easy freebie of that punishment. Okay? That was what we learned until that point. Then the Gemara said, okay, you now told me why you didn't get the punishment you were supposed to get. You didn't tell me why you get this replacement punishment. Where does this replacement punishment come from? Malkut, lashes. The Pasuk says you do kasher zamam. It doesn't say, and if not, give him lashes. The Gemara says, actually, it does. Zamam means conspiring. It's the short version of zomemim. So witnesses that wanted to do something to someone. By the way, as an aside, just because Ray brought that up, we also learned one other lesson, that you only punish someone kasher zamam lasot, when he wanted to give a response. But if he actually succeeded and the punishment was administered to this innocent guy, then they don't get the punishment based on the lesson we just learned, because then the punishment that they gave is not enough to get them kapara. So we leave that to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara asks, what's the source for Malkut? And the Gemara answered, V'haya im bin hakot rasha. It says a pasuk that they're going to justify the innocent, and they're going to vilify the one that's guilty. And then if he deserves Malkut, and the Gemara says, where would that be talking about? Because in any case that you give Malkut, there isn't a guy who's guilty and a guy who's innocent. It's usually about someone who's committing a sin to God. So therefore, there isn't an innocent and guilty party that are fighting it out. Where would that be relevant? That was Morris's point. It would be relevant in a case where witnesses came and said the guy is guilty. So we made an innocent guy guilty. Then other witnesses came along and did them zomimim. What does the Bet Din do? They make the guy who was innocent in the beginning painted out to be guilty. We return him to his innocent status. We make these rishaim, we call them guilty. V'hayayim bin hakot rasha. And if they deserve malkut, then we give them lashes. That is everything that we've learned up until now. It took us about 4.5 minutes. Mechila, it took me longer than I said it would, but everyone is on the same page at this point. Good. Let's continue. Says the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan. We are on 2b2 or Bet Amud Bet. Tanu Rabbanan. About, I would say, half the page down. That right second wide line. Please only answer Amen if you're listening to this live. Baruch atah Adonai. Amen. Tanu Rabbanan. I got more than I bargained for. Tanu Rabbanan. Rabbis taught us. Arba zomimim. No, it's okay. I had a hair. That was delicious. I'm not sure what the correct baracha is on hair, but okay. Arba probably shakol, which I was fulfilled with the coffee. Arba devarim. There are 4 things. Ne'emru be'edim zomin, that was said by edim zomin, and that they do not get that punishment. En na'asin ben girusha ben chalutza. We just saw that. They don't become the son of a girusha or the son of a chalutza. We don't give them that status, like we saw in the Mishnah. Ve'en golin la'ir miklat, and they do not get sent to the ir miklat, to the city of refuge for accidental murderers. Ve'en mishalmin et ha'kofer. They do not pay this kofer fine. What are we talking about over here? The case is in the Gemara where you have a ox. I have an ox and its name is Mark. And Mark decides this morning that he wants to leave his mark, and he goes and he gores a person literally to death. My ox kills somebody. What's the halacha? Should I have expected that my ox is going to go Majnun? Now, if I live in Pamplona, fine. But if I don't live in Pamplona, right? I have no reason to think that my bull is going to go not kill somebody, right? That's not a regular thing on the bull list of things, tasks for today. So I don't have to expect that. But if my animal has done it already, once, twice, 3 times, now you know that this ox is Majnun. I never figured out, by the way, how a guy leaves his ox to do this. At a certain point, it's not worth it. Take it to reserve cut. Let's have dinner, right? And yet the halakha is if it gored 3 times, so you should have expected it. All right. In that case, now it killed somebody. What's the punishment?
You killed the ox and you make up monetarily for the injury.
So the person has to pay exactly kofer.
It was yesterday's parasha, no?
Very good. It's kofer. I wanted to see if anyone would pick up on that. Okay. You have to pay kofer. Kofer is like this amount of money, and it comes from the word kapara, right? Kofer. You have to pay kofer nafsho, the money to cover his soul. Now, we have learned about this many times, and we'll see in just a minute, this idea of the hanging modifier that you have here in this word, kofer, and we'll come back to it.
So does that mean that if someone's worth how much they contribute to their family?
Oh, excellent. Nailed it. We'll come back to this in just a minute, all right? Now, the Gemara says like this. If I come and I say, this guy has an ox, it gored 3 times, and we saw it gore, someone killed somebody. What are they trying to obligate this man for? To pay this money, this fine, this kofer. That's what we're obligating. So do we say that now you have to pay this fine? I would think this is a classic case of edim zomimim. They're trying to make you pay. You make them pay. Says the Mishnah, nope, the Braita explains to us, they do not have an obligation, they do not pay the kofar when they try to do that. And if they say that someone stole something that they cannot pay, and then they're going to then sell them into slavery as an eved ivri to be able to pay off that which they stole, the halacha is, they are not sold as Hebrew slaves for testifying as a conspiring witness that someone else should be sold as a eved ivri.
Which is the backup if you can't pay?
Which is the backup if you can't pay.
Last week.
Yeah, the one that we just had. Yeah, okay. Says the Gemara. But there's one more piece that's not in the Braita. Mishum Rabbi Akiva Amru. We said in the name Rabbi Akiva. Af en mishalmin al pi atzman. They also don't pay al pi atzman. Now this can be tricky, especially if you learned some Gemara before. Because normally when you say you don't pay al pi atzman, you know what that usually means? That means hoda'at baldin. When you testify against yourself. Let me give you an example. Let's say I walk into Beit Din and I say, listen, I've been having this whole court case about this building, about this house, about this car, about this debt. I lied. I really owe the money. What's the halakha? Do I owe that money because I just admitted it?
For sure.
Hoda'at baldin kemea edim dami, says the Gemara. The admission of a baldin, of one of the protagonists in the case, is kemea edim. It's like 100 witnesses. As we learned earlier, that's a lot of witnesses. Is 100 witnesses, what is that worth vis-a-vis 2 witnesses? Same thing. Why the Gemara chooses it is just the euphemism to be able to illustrate how strong it is. There's no difference, okay? So when you come in and you say, I owe this money, you're now obligated. Now that sounds like a funny thing. Why do I need to obligate myself? I'm telling you I owe it. I'll give you the case where you have to do that. Let's say, as an example, I owe money to Ray, but I also owe money to Harry. Harry comes in and says, you owe me this money. And I say, it's true, I owe him this money. Comes along Ray and says, 1 second. If he owes money to Harry, I'm not going to get paid. So I'm going to challenge you and say, you're lying, you don't owe money to Harry. Bring witnesses that you owe money to Harry, otherwise I'm not going to get paid. So when you're testifying, now it's going to come effectively at the expense of someone else. There's many examples like this, but what we say is once you have hoda'at baldin, it's as if you have 2 witnesses to the veracity of that claim. So normally when you say al pi atzman, you mean that you're paying by your own admission. So what would the case be here, where Edim said that this guy owes the money, and then they came in and admitted that it's not true.
And he himself is the Ed Zomem?
They're their own Edim Zomemim.
Right.
That's what most people think this Gemara means. But that's not true. Because you can't make yourself Edim Zomemim.
Someone else can, though.
Someone else can. So what does it mean that they don't pay Edim Zomemim money on their own admission? All your Hodat Baldin would do is make you into not Edim Zomemim, but Edim that are liars. And we already explained there's a difference between someone contradicting your testimony and someone saying you were with us on that night. If I say you owe and 2 other witnesses come and say you don't owe, what happens? The witnesses cancel each other out. But I don't become Edim Zomemim. The only case of Edim Zomemim is I come in, I say, I saw you do this on Tuesday, on this corner and that time. You say at that time you're with me somewhere else. So you can't, how could you make yourself Edim Zomemim? That's not what Al Pi Atzman means. Al Pi Atzman means, I come in, I say, I witnessed Harry borrow this money, he owes the money. Me and my witness partner. Ray comes in with Stanley and they're like, no. You were actually with us, you were giving the Gemara class at that time. You could not possibly have been there at that time. You make me Edim Zomemim. What happens? And this is funny. I find it funny. I don't know, maybe you don't find it funny, but I have a very big imagination. The second I hear that from Harry and Ray, from Ray and Stanley, I run as fast as I can out of the Beit Din. You hear me? I don't think he realizes, which is a good sign. He's in the middle of engrossed. Listen, guys.
That's unbelievable.
Right? Listen, one day by you, Ray. Okay. Guys, yeah? What happens? So they've testified against me. I'm about to be Edim Zomemim. Before the Beit Din, could carry out the verdict against me, I hightail it out of that Beit Din,
You run?
and I run to another Beit Din. And I run into the Beit Din, out of breath, like Stanley came in just now, and I'm like, I'm Edim Zolamim. I testify that they just made me Edim Zolamim.
Because that's less of a punishment.
In a case of Af Al Pi Atzmam, they don't pay. Okay?
So he ran to do it himself because it's the lesser of the two.
Because he's admitting,
If he admitted it, it's less than if somebody proved him to be Ed Zomem, he's saying.
yes. And until, we don't yet know why.
I know
Because
why.
we don't yet know why. You know why? Because once the Beit Din accepted the Edim Zolamim, it's done. You owe the money now. The fact that they didn't render the verdict should allow you to now run to another Beit Din and kind of give yourself up. What is
Might
that
be
way?
part of the teshuvah process.
So we're going to see. The Gemara is going to handle it. But this Afal Pi Atzmam, I just think it's very funny. They're like, guilty. And they make a break for it. And they're like, get those Edim. I don't know. I find it a bunch of rabbis chasing them, tackling the guy in the front of the shul.
He
All
probably
right.
owes a much bigger debt, and his friend said, you pay me, make it like you owe me, so that way you get out of the other guy. I said, yeah, I owe him $20, I'll get out of my 20 G's.
Ray's got it all worked out. Yeah. That was my class yesterday. Stealing, wheeling, and dealing. Okay. Let's go. My son said to me, Abus, I was cracking up. He said, when I saw the title of your class, Abba, stealing, wheeling, and dealing, you know what it made me think of? I said, who? He said, Clyde Fraser. The Knicks are wheeling and dealing. Okay, fine. En na'asim bo ben gerusha ben chalutza. Says the Gemara. What do you mean? Why are you not made ben chalutza ben gerusha? We already know. Kita amaran, like you just told me 2 seconds ago, and we just did in the recap. You don't go to galut of are miklat kida amaran, like we already explained just now, because it says who you will go and not someone else. Then mishalmin et kofer, and you don't pay kofer. Why not? Listen to the Gemara. Kasavri kufra kapara. What does that mean? He holds this braita that says you don't pay kapara, kufra, is because he holds kufra is kapara. Now, in order to understand this opinion, kufra kapara, I'm going to do something a little naughty, and I'm going to skip ahead. I'm going to, give you the other side, so you have the ability to compare and contrast. What are these opinions, as Ray correctly pointed out earlier? What are we saying when we say kufra kapara? Kufra is a kapara. That sounds pretty obvious. You know why I would think kufra kapara? Because it's the same word. What would the hava amina be? Hava amina means, what would I have thought? Hava amina, I would have said. What would I would have thought? How could it not be kapara? The other opinion holds that kufra is mamona, is money. So one opinion holds it's kapara, it's atonement. One opinion holds it's money. And we'll see, what does that exactly mean? But now I want to share with you, the Gemara is saying that this Tana that says that Edim Zolamim do not pay kufra, the reason is because they hold kufra kapara. Let's see what that means. V'hani lav b'nei kapara ninu. And these people are not b'nei kapara. They don't need a kapara. So let's try and understand what the Gemara says. It's a little bit complicated, so dial in, and I'm going to give you the understanding, okay? Kufra kapara means as follows. When someone's ox gores somebody, at that point, they are responsible for the fact that they had this weapon of mass destruction and they let it loose. It's already done 3 times, right? And now at this point, we're in a situation where you're not watching this violent animal, it's killed again, right? Terrible. You need a kapara for this. What should happen to you at this point? At this point, you should pay a much higher penalty. And that penalty is mitabi de shamayim. The court's not going to kill you because you didn't kill someone yourself. But the person gets killed min hashamayim before their time. They die young. Okay?
Did we learn this?
We learned this a while ago in a different context.
In the parasha yesterday?
Yes, it was in the parasha.
Killing accidentally and how it has to be, it's like somewhat retribution for something you did.
Oh, that's something. That's Kabbalah.
But is that the same thing?
Yes, that is the same
How about when
thing,
you fix
but not
it?
necessarily this.
If you have met bidei shaman,
So here, that's the answer. Kufra kapara. So the Torah says that if you pay this kofer, that is instead of this punishment. So we might have looked at it like it's a fine, but actually, it's getting you off of something much stricter. Exactly the same as the idea before of going into exile, when otherwise you would have had a higher price to pay. So instead you go to exile. And then the question is, are we going to give you that get out of jail free card? Okay? So the Torah says you pay kufra. Okay? Now,
I'm sorry, God will take a man-made decision versus his decision?
no, kofar is his decision. It's in the Torah.
But if they give him a fine,
That fine is God's decision. It's in the Torah. The Torah says, and he will pay kofer nafsho. Literally, it says it in the Torah. Okay?
so God won't give a punishment if it's a penalty.
We've come across this idea where we say yesh din lemata, en din lemala. When justice is carried out, whatever God says justice is, in this world, then God in heaven doesn't need to intervene. If there's no justice in this world, then God intervenes, either in this world or in the next. Okay? So let's pay close attention. Says the Gemara as follows. If kofer is a kapara, what's the kapara? You deserve to die because your shore took the life of somebody. We're giving you this kapara, this kofer, in order to not die. Says the Gemara, these witnesses, what are they saying? They're saying that this guy had a shore, he deserves to die, therefore he gets kapara. What would they have succeeded in? If they, let's say they were successful, what would have happened? This guy would have paid
Money.
kofer, money, correct? But did he need kofer? No, because he was innocent. There was no death penalty that he needs to avert, because his ox did not actually gore somebody. We just made up this testimony. That's what Edim Zomim are. They're lying about what happened, right? So the ox actually didn't kill anybody. There is no story here. They made up a story. So therefore, even though they're going to try and give him the punishment of kofer, right? It never really happened. And therefore, the witnesses can't, it's impossible for them to pay a kofer, because you're looking at it only as a monetary value.
Yeah, but when was it proven that they were etim zomemim?
So let's give the timeline. They walk in on Sunday. They say, this guy is ox, gored, okay? On Sunday afternoon, the Beit Din says, oh, his ox gored, he's got to pay, as an example.
Okay.
Okay? All of a sudden, before they bring down the gavel, two witnesses walk in and they say, it's not true, you were with us.
There's an Ige that's still dead.
No, there is nobody. We have no. This
They made it up.
They made it up. That's what Edim Zomim.
X died. Oh, great. Who? Oh, we don't know.
Yeah, we witnessed it.
Okay.
Right? By the way, hello, hold on a second.
It's a good question.
Hold on, by the way.
Good point.
Let's say we have witnesses that say that a person was thrown off a plane and these two people killed someone. We would also, but we would follow the witnesses, because you have witnesses giving a testimony that they killed someone. It wouldn't matter, right?
Somebody dead in that case.
So, no, they pushed them into the ocean. We witnessed it.
You know what I think the missing link is? Everyone's thinking about evidence, like in a U.S. court. This is what the Gemara is telling us, that the testimonies serve as evidence.
Or let me give you a better scenario. We found a guy gored to death. They come and say it was this guy and his ox.
Okay.
Easier?
Ray likes that better.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's two round holes in his stomach. two horn-shaped, holes in the guy's stomach. We don't know who done it. Carmen Sandiego helps us out. We figure out that this is what it is. But whichever way it works, the point is, the story they're saying happened didn't happen. So the guy himself is not paying real kofer. The only case we could make the witnesses pay something is to make them pay something that this guy was obligated to pay. Here, they were not obligated to pay. You could have taken it from him in an illegitimate way, but it would never have been kofer. So therefore, it doesn't transport to these guys, because kofer is only kapara. Let's look at the other side for a minute. If kofer was money, if kofer just is like a regular court case, you have to pay money, then just like every other case, where Beit Din would have forced you to pay money, we're now going to force the Edim Zomim to pay the money. Simple. Here, in this case, it's only if you understand kofer is kapara, not money, so then giving them the opportunity to pay kofer is not what they were doing to him. They were giving him the chance to atone for the act of murder via ox. Okay. Ox-related murder. Okay. Says the Gemara, Man tana kufra kapara. Who holds kofer is kapara? Where did this opinion come from that the nature of kofer is actually a kapara and not just a monetary payment? Exactly what Ray says. Ready? Amar Rav Chizda says Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, it's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. The Tetanya, because he says, the Pasuk says, that we just quoted, V'natan pidyon nafsho, and he will give a redemption of nafsho, of his soul. You know what that means? Who's his? We're talking about two people. The ox-related murderer owner, right? And the other guy. The first opinion says, Deme Nizak, the victim's worth, value. You will pay pidyon nafsho, the pidyon, the redemption of his soul. Who's his? The first opinion, who is the opinion of the Braita, says Deme Nizak, the value of the victim. Rabbi Yishmael ben Osher, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Omer, no, not the value of the victim. Deme Mazik, the value of the murderer. My love, Bahaika Mifligi, says the Gemara, isn't this what they must be arguing? In Demar Sava, the first opinion holds, right? Kufra mamona. Kufra is money. It's a monetary value. What damage did you do? You killed the guy. Whatever the guy's value is, that's the damage you did. So that opinion, the first opinion in the Braita that says that you pay the value amount of the worth of the nizak, that guy must hold that kofer is money. It's a monetary payment that you're paying. Umar Sava, but the other opinion holds, kufra, what are we paying kofer for? I'm paying to get out of my own early, untimely death. So whose value would I have to pay for? My own value. Genius. So the difference between deme nizak and deme mazik is in kufra mamona or kufra kapara. I just want to point out, this that we just did, this is Gemara. This idea, like where you're taking, literally, it's like a combination lock. You have 1 through 10 on this wheel, 1 through 10 on this wheel, and you're matching up this machloket and that machloket. You see, these guys are arguing in this. Why are they arguing in that? Because each one of these guys is taking on one side of this machloket. And therefore, that's why they say what they say. And the crazy thing is, what I always loved about this, is that this is the great unifier of learning Torah, where you see...
It's called gyroscope.
Yes, a gyroscope. It's when you see how there's a thread weaving through that this opinion then gives you that opinion. And this machloket is really tied. It's not many different arguments. There's a grand unifying theory. Okay, says the Gemara, hold up. I love what you...
What's the value of Zeke?
Sorry?
When Ray's question was the person or the victim, we assess how much he was worth, that's how much they pay. But what's the value of the owner of the ox? How does that one work?
So that's a great question. The answer to that is not for here, because this is not our sugya. But the answer is, what would it be worth to have that guy, to replace that guy? In other words, if the punishment would have been that I was going to bar minan die early, so what am I contributing to the world, to the work, to my family, or whatever? So the value would be assessed. If I was to die, what would stop? What would that be assessed at?
But isn't that stop? That's your value. What would mazik be as the owner's value? Isn't that what mazik is?
No, that's the whole point. Since kufra kapara, if I'm trying to get kapara for myself, because otherwise I'm going to die, so what am I doing? I'm paying the value of me as if I would have died. You see? The other opinion says, no, it's a monetary loss I'm trying to plug. So what is the monetary loss? To the Nizak's family. So that's what the Gemara just did very nicely with a bow. Let me take your question right after this, because I don't want people to lose that thread.
They laid out both sides. Now we're going to see what...
They laid out both sides. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, ho, I love that. Beautiful how you delivered that. That was great. The Kule Alma, really, maybe this machloke is not about that. Nizak Mazik is not about that. The Kule Alma, actually, you know what? Everybody holds kufra kapara. Everybody holds it's a kapara. V'hacha v'haika mifligi. This is what they're arguing in. Mar savar b'de nizak shaiminan. Mar savar b'de mazik shaiminan. One opinion. No, really, it's all about kapara. I have to get myself off the hook. But how do I get myself off the hook? Do I pay my value, the life that's about to be terminated early, in punishment? Or do I say to Hashem, Mechila, I'm so sorry for terminating this guy's life. This is the damage I did. Don't take my life. I'll replace his life. You see what we just did? The Gemara said it could be that it's not dependent on that, and I could really answer both opinions according to the opinion of Kufra Kapara. And what does that mean? If that's true, then both opinions in this Braita could be holding like our Braita over here that says that Edim Zomemim do not pay for a kofer. In this case, if you were to split the two,
Like retribution.
if you were true to retribution, then on the retribution side, on the Nizak side, if that's really money, then they would actually be paying, Edim Zomemin would have to pay Kufra Kapara. The Gemara says, Maitam, how does this work? If you're telling me this, that this is how it works, Maitam Rabanan, what does this mean? Ne'emar hashta lemata, it says, hashta. Hashata lemata, it says this idea that we're putting something on you later on. V'ne'emar hashata lemala, and it also says hashata that we're putting this fine on you, right? Lemala also earlier. Mala alam b'nizak, afkan b'nizak. Just like over there is in the nizak, also over here is in the nizak. Let me just explain. It says in the pasuk, kofer yushat alav. That's what hashata means. The kofer, this money, this payment that you're going to make, is put on you. But it also uses the word hashata earlier. And earlier, the word hashata is referring to who? The person who's the victim. So if we use the word earlier, placing this on, and that's going with regards to the nizak earlier, so also it's logical to say that later on, because since it could go either way, you need to prove why it would be going to the nizak. So the opinion in the beginning, the Rabbanan say, the reason why you would pay kapara based on his value, not on yours, is because of hashata. Clear? Carries on the Gemara. Rabbi Ishmael and the other opinion, which says bidemazik, he goes that it's about the value of the aggressor, of the murder of the cow owner. Why does he say differently? The Gemara says, "V'natan pidyon nafsho ketiv," and he will give the redemptive amount of nafsho, of his soul. And therefore, since it says he will give, and he will give for his soul, I get, rabbis, that you could say it means his soul, i.e. the other guy. But it's a little bit of a stretch to say, and he will pay his pidyon nafsho, and have the his mean the other guy. Because you'd be switching pronouns, right, in the same sentence. And we, as Jews, don't really love switching pronouns. Okay, good?
Is there a difference between paying the kofar to the Beit Din for one's own life versus paying the kofar through the Beit Din to the victim's family for the loss of the breadwinner?
I don't understand. That is the machloket of the Gemara. The Ben Yizak
It's a
Mazik.
different question he's asking. Regardless of whether you say victim or owner, is the money only paid to the Beit Din? Or is the money in the first case of the people who say it's the owner goes to the Beit Din? In the case of if it's the victim, you pay the victim's family.
Nobody holds that what's it called? That the nizak money goes to the Beit Din. The nizak's money is paid to the nizak. Are you asking if the demem mazik goes to the family?
Yes.
Is that what?
Yes. Now, where does this money go? And is there a difference depending on how you resolve this machloket?
Yes, there is. But again, remember, you can't figure it out from where it would go and how it would be paid to this, because that would be drawn from the learning itself. Let's wait till we finish this, and then we'll come back and we'll illustrate it. Okay? Says the Gemara. V'Rabbanan. So Rabbi Ishmael says, I don't like that. It doesn't fit nicely in V'natan pidyon nafsho. Rabbanan, the Gemara says, and the rabbis, en pidyon nafsho ketiv. Yes, I agree with you. It does say pidyon nafsho. Miu ki shaiminan b'denizak shaiminan. Rabbis answer brilliant. They say, yes, you do pay a pidyon for your soul. I'm not switching pronouns. I'm not saying his over here in the first part of the sentence, and he will give his redemption for his soul means, that it's switching. I'm saying you pay to redeem your soul. Just how do we figure out how much that is? That we use hashata. So the Rabbanan say, I'm totally with you, Rabbi Ishmael. And I have no problem with that sentence either. He will pay pidyon for his nefesh. But how do we decide how much pidyon for his nefesh is? I hold that the decision of that is based on the value of the nizak because of hashata. Clear? Is this clear so far?
How do you value a life?
Excellent question, not for here, okay? Excellent question. By the way, there's an entire masechet called arachin. Arachin means values, okay? Now, that's one. A second place where we're going to get there is in the masechet of Baba Kama. Baba Kama talks about when you damage someone and you have to pay the 5 damages, nezek, tsar, ripui, shevet, and boshet, how you figure out what is the damage, what are the medical bills, what is the unemployment, right? So all the damages that you could cost them in that basket, there's a formula, and we'll get to it there. Okay, says the Gemara. Ve'enim karim be'eved ivri. Also, where did we just learn eved ivri? This week's parasha. You do not sell the guy to be eved ivri because he has money he has not paid. Savar Rav Hamnuna thought to say hani mi lehecha di'itle ledideh. This case, right, is when he has money himself. Demigu deihu lo nizdaven, since he himself would not have been sold, in hunami lo mizdavnu. Rav Hamnuna thought, you know what this case is in the Braita? Where the guy I'm saying stole, he has money. So what would happen if my Edim Zomimim would have worked out well? He would have been obligated to pay $100 as a fine, to pay back the money he quote unquote stole but never stole. But he has the money in his pocket. He'll just pay the fine, he'll pay the money. So in that case, is he going to become a Hebrew slave?
No, you can't.
No, you only become a Hebrew slave if you have no money. So Rav Hamnuna thought, you know what the Braita means? You don't become a Hebrew slave because he himself would not have become it. So therefore, kasher zamam, I didn't do it to him. So therefore, it's not going to happen to me, right?
How did they know he had money?
No, Rav Hamnuna is saying the case of the Braita where you don't get the punishment is when the guy had money. So therefore, that would not have happened to him. I'm going to levy on you $100. Just like I levied on him $100. Why should I make you a slave if he wasn't going to become a slave?
If you're going to accuse him of it, you assume he's having it, right? If it's false.
Lav dafka.
Right.
Not necessarily so.
So so it's just in the they're just talking about just in the case where you know he has money.
Yes, and the reason why you don't get to be a Hebrew slave is because he also is not going to be a Hebrew slave.
Right. You're not actually sending him to be.
You're not actually sending him to do that.
Right.
The Gemara says, "Aval hecha deletle didide." But if that guy did not have, so de facto, when I say the guy owes $100 and he does not have $100, what did I cause him? I didn't just cause him to have $100 debt. I caused him to become a Hebrew slave. So if that case, so in other words, if the victim does not have $100 and you say he's obligated $100, what happens to him? He would be an Eved Ivri. So then, if I'm the witnesses, even if I have $100, you still would make me go to be, you would not make me go to be a slave because I'm not making him. Again, are you following the logic?
The last part I missed.
Okay, so when that guy does not have, but I do have, you would make me be a Hebrew slave. Because what was I going to make you do?
Be a Hebrew slave.
Be a Hebrew slave. So therefore, even though I could pay the $100,
Still have to be a Hebrew slave.
but that's not what I was going to do to you. So you still would have to be a Hebrew slave. That's what Rav Hamnuna thought to say. Okay? That was his hava.
If you're a Hebrew slave, though, you can redeem yourself at any point in the 7 years. You can pay the $100 4 seconds after you became a Hebrew slave.
Nathan is asking a genius question. Who cares if it makes you a Hebrew slave? I could pay it off. The answer is, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. The fact that you were made a Hebrew slave, even if you then redeemed yourself, there's a status thing, there's a wedge aras, there's a whole situation, until you're able to pay, until you get the money. Who knows if by the time you get the money from Western Union, the guy already married you off to his Shifcha Kena'anit. You already have 3 Shifcha Kena'anit kids. It could happen that, so we would make him.
You might find that attractive.
By the way, you're saying it as a joke. I just want to give you a crazy aside. What is a Jewish person? A Jewish person has unfortunate luck to be born as a mamzer. A Jewish person, a mamzer, is not allowed to marry into the Jewish people. Do you know that? Mm-hmm. Not allowed to marry into Jewish people.
Mamzer is a...
So he's allowed to marry another mamzer.
Out of adultery.
Right? So what?
Even if both are Jewish.
Yeah, even if both are Jewish. That child, and by the way, the children of two mamzerim would also be mamzerim. Unreal. There were communities that would have logs because no one's allowed to marry the kids. Used to have it in Syria. Okay? Listen to this. This is wild. He doesn't mean the mamzerim, he means the records. Okay. The Gemara says something unbelievable. The Gemara says, but if he marries a Shifcha Kena'anit that was converted back to Judaism, okay, so those children, or if he sells it, so there were cases of mamzerim that would want to make themselves an Eved Ivri. Because then they could have children with the Shifcha Kena'anit. They would arrange for someone to have a Shifcha Kena'anit. Shifcha Kena'anit has half mitzvot, like an Eved Kena'ani. Then when they're redeemed, when they're released from their slavery, they become Jews again. And they become Jews that are clean and can marry anybody.
Oh wow.
Isn't that wild? Think about, though, a person who has no chance. I read a book once. It was called On a Golden Chain. One of the most heartbreaking books I ever read in my life about a person who finds out that they're a mamzer. Heartbreaking. So you could imagine someone who's at the end of that rope, what are they going to do? This was one of the answers that they had. That they become an Eved Ivri, they marry Shifcha Kena'anit, what's it called? And then the Shifcha Kena'anit is redeemed, and the children are, afterwards are also released. It's wild. Wow. Really
what's Shifcha Kena'anit?
A non-Jewish servant.
Non-Jewish servant.
So she's still considered, that then is redeemed, or is allowed to go free. On redemption, they become full-fledged Jews. Wow. They get gerut. Okay? All right. Let's continue. Says the Gemara, which we're going to wrap up over here. Says the Gemara, okay. Vilem rule, 1 second. If that's how you understand the Braita, like Rav Hamnuna just said, Vilem rule, let them say to them, I ant havelach, mi have mizdavnit, anan nami lo mizdavninan. 1 second. You're trying to tell me, Rav Hamnuna, that the Braita is only going in the case where the guy has, and that's where they don't get sold. But if the guy does not have, and I have, I would have put you as a Hebrew servant, so I have to become a Hebrew servant. So the Braita is not talking about that case. The Gemara says, let the Eidim Zomimim, let the witnesses say, 1 second, I didn't say, I'm bearing witness that you're a Hebrew slave. All I said is, I'm bearing witness you owe $100. So the halakha is, we do to you, you do to me what I was doing to you. If you would have had money, would you have had to become a Hebrew slave? No. So I didn't make you a Hebrew slave. So now that I have money, I should be identical to you, that I am able to pay and not go into a slave, just like you had that option. So the Gemara is attacking Rav Hamnuna's understanding, in which case, in any scenario, they should not be made to become Hebrew slaves. The Gemara now is going to fix Rav Hamnuna. Ela Sava Rav Hamnuna thought to say, Hani mi lihecha de itle, or lidide, or lididhu. This case, where the Edim Zomim, where we don't give them the punishment of becoming a slave, is when either one of them has. Either he has, the victim, and he doesn't become a slave, so then they don't become slaves because he didn't become a slave, or where they have money, where they don't become a slave because he also had the option of getting out of slavery. When neither one of them has, I don't have, and you don't have, then they would be sold. Why? Because I tried to give you $100 a ticket. You now, it turns out, it comes back on me. What would have happened to you in the scenario where you couldn't pay it? You would be sold into slavery. So now that I don't have it, same thing's happening to me. I'm also being sold into slavery in the same way. I have an option, but I can't exercise it. Okay? Amale, so they changed Rav Huna's position. Amale Rava, and Rava then said to him, V'nibkar b'gnevato, amar Achmana. The pasuk says he only gets sold for his gineva, for his theft. B'gnevato, v'lo bezimamo. You only get sold into Hebrew slavery to pay back that debt, b'ginevato, when you stole. V'lo bezimamo. Not when I was edim zomimin and this money was placed on me as a fine. You don't get sold into Hebrew slavery when you have to pay back edim zomimin money. Only when you have to pay back stolen money. So therefore, says Rava to Rav Hamnuna, in no circumstances, even if they don't have the money and the other guy didn't have the money, whichever way you cut it, whichever way you slice it, the punishment for edim zomimin can never be that the person goes into Hebrew slavery. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.